And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome. So, can you hear me now? Really? I mean, so is anybody there? Can anyone tell me? Are you listening? Can you hear me? Should I keep using this stupid thing, or should I just go back to the microphone in the laptop that people keep saying, "Hey, I can't hear you." Well, epoch to epoch, what does that mean? Well, epochs are a period of time of spiritual evolution, and there's a beginning, middle, and end to each epoch, and then the beginning, middle, and end, and beginning, middle. So it's kind of a circular um, motif, and hmm, uh, just gonna sit here and meditate.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Bye, ladies. Thank you. Welcome to the neighborhood, guys. Gavin gonna build the house down in Butler.
Butler has a harbor. People who move here don't realize what Butler used to be. Butler used to be bigger than Mountain City and Elizabethton. Not anymore. And so that's the epoch of this place. Um, it's definitely changing. And the folks coming in have no idea what it used to be, so they don't care about the historical dynamic of what things what it was. 387.
They bought property where the
Anyway, did you ever hear the song "My Adidas" by a black? It was by that. It was in the 1980s. The black rap band that they made the movie about. You know, inside Compton.
NWA.
Yes, that was Adidas gave him. Once they made that song, they gave him $1 million.
That's all I wear. I wear Adidas. That's my brand, my number one brand.
Right. I have no brands. My brand is whatever clothes I got that don't smell. And how I clean my clothes is I hang them in the outside, and it rains on them. Then I spritz them with a little bottle I have of PLC, and which is a kind of it's a detergent, an organic detergent that just lifts the dirt out of any fiber. It's really good for cleaning wood floors. And also was my liquid of that is you know, spritz a lot of boop, 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 boop. Put it out on the line. It rains. I live in a rainforest. It rains. So that one person is there. Can you hear my voice? Can you tell me? I don't get that. Could you try again? That's a problem with. Uh, I don't. So can you hear me? Okay. Work just confuses my laptop. Oh, so you know, the war in Ukraine, the never-ending pandemics, the economic collapse. You don't realize that all of this is manifested, created um, just to get you to say, "Uncle, yes, I will be your slave." I mean, you already are. You already own. You already property. Let's see. So I listen to the radio, BBC, ABC. Let's see. Hey there, Jane. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Jane? Can you hear my voice? I've been on now for about 7 minutes, and things keep coming in and out. Oh, is it okay if we listen to you? Blah 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 blah. Right. And I was going to talk about epochs. Jane, let's see. Yes, hear you. Okay. So, do you know what an epoch is? It's a spiritual period of time, right? And this was the Piscean age, getting what you want through violence, right? The Aquarian age is getting what you need through understanding, right? So we kind of started to move into the Aquarian age in the 50s. So, boo, 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 boo. Anyway, so, yes, I hear you. So here we are in, in the land of epoch. Let's see. Epoch, yeah. Long geological time frame, or cosmic, not an era. Yeah, long time. So that's epoch. And so when you tag them with things like this was the Piscean age, um, Pisces is a astronomical, you know, dynamic period of time, right, of astrology, right? But see, all of these things are mythological in nature, and so that's why I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, because I look at all of these things and look at the trends that are coming together, and it's quite interesting because no matter where I am, it's the same. Whether I'm in a big city, a small city, or way out in the middle of nowhere, everyone is responding in the same way, right? Which is quite interesting, except for the few folk who are somewhat awake and not woke. And that's the interesting thing. Words are, anybody, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And don't believe what I say. And I want to first start off with saying anyone who's a snowflake or gets upset about hearing things that they don't, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. Well, then you should go. Right? If you are an open-minded person, this is, what we have here on Dreamy Dreamland is a open-minded, a freely inquiring society. That's what we are. That's what the adepts, the folk like Jane, is one of the adepts, right? Somewhere between 500 and 2,800 people watch this show, and those 2,800 should freaking give me thumbs up. Come on, thumbs up, and subscribe and hit that little bell. It helps the old algorithm, and make some comments down below. I mean, I make comments on other people's shows all the time, right? And I make comments to people who put something up. Someone said, "Were you and John lovers?" It's like, really? Yeah. What? Nuts? Not nuts, but are you blind? Jeez. John is my good friend, who I will never give up, no matter where he goes or how much he, physically treats me poorly. Um, I realize that John is the canary in the social and spiritual coal mine of where the human race is right now. You want to see what shape humanity is? Just go watch John's channel. That's what shape humanity is in. John represents physically, and that's why I said, "Oh, this guy is a genius." It's really great. This is like amazing. And I've been, people, you shouldn't say that. John is terrible. He's not the most popular, director and writer and musician. No, he's not, but he's the best John can be at the moment. That's a lot better than most of you guys out there are doing. You're not doing squat. Jane, folks like Jane, she is. There are other folks who are, doing stuff, and there are people like Dragon and others who are doing their best to keep, the whole thing about why we're in our avatars, this body. You are not this body. This is just a mud puppet, right? And the strings animate us, right? That is our soul. Our soul is nothing special. It's a string. It's a golden thread. It's like a fiber optic line to our spirit. And what is our spirit? Our spirit is the essence of our love's co-creation. God is love. God is it's the name that anyone could, that's why I call, all those of you who want to write to me at the due to wait 42 at Gmail. I've sent my novels out without realizing that this laptop works on Google. So everything I write goes up in the Google Cloud. And if you're not on Google, when I send you that document, it won't unpack it. And so when people go, "Oh, you need to," you haven't told me, all of you who I've sent my stuff who aren't on Google themselves. If you're on Google, bingo, it appears and it's no big deal. Oh, look at that, there it is. So I would say 30% of the folk who I've sent my novels to aren't on Google. And so when I send it to them, it says, "Hey, Dreamy Dreamland has sent you something," and then they would go look for it and it won't unpack because they're on Microsoft or they're in some other server or some other, and they don't tell me that. "Oh, you have to unblock it." They say, "No, I'm not blocking it. It's just being sent to you in Google. And you either need to get a Google account or tell me what platform you're on so I can choose it when I send it to you." Now, of all the people who I've sent things to, that I've written, and I've written it in, Google, and I didn't realize that. See, I didn't know. I don't know. I don't know anything about any of this because it's irrelevant to me, right? And so everywhere I go, I fall into the environment and realize it's just like every other environment, no matter whether it's super urban, somewhat suburban, or really rural, right? People are people, and they have the same issues, same problems. And for 70 years, I've been dealing with them and understanding them, and I can help everyone, right? But to help, what does sensei alba? What does that mean? Sensei is a Japanese word that means teacher, but see, people don't understand Japanese culture. The most revered position in the Japanese culture is the sensei. Right? Now, for Japan, as after the American Civil War, Japan, which was a totally xenophobic kind of country, um, said we need to industrialize, right? So, because Russia was on their doorstep, all these other industrial nations, where England was, basically taken over China, and Southeast Asia was taken over by France. So Japan said, okay, we're next. And they used to keep people out of their neck of the woods by their samurai culture. Well, it's hard for samurais. That movie with Tom Cruise, The Last Samurai, showed what, samurais were unbelievable great soldiers, but going up against machine guns, you can't do that. So they decided to become industrialized. And, between the 1890s and today, they have lost a great deal of their soul, right, of their chi. Right? And they have traded their chi with materialism, right? And the greatest representation of that is the Yakuza in the Japanese mob. Because the Japanese mob is just like the Italian mob, just like the Khazarian mob, just like. And the Khazarian mob is what Russia is today, and what Israel is today. Right? And Russia and Israel are kind of like this, but in reality, it comes all the way around. This. And in both those cultures, when you do this, that means this, So when Fonzie was going, hey, he was really doing this. And in England, this is victory. This is like, so you have to understand all of these cultural dynamics, which no one does. Right? They can feel them. They can feel upset. So what's going on in Russia and Ukraine is this mob which runs everything, which is a unipolar entity, meaning I call it the hidden hand. Other high table, or other euphemistic terms for it. The guy who wrote the James Bond movies, books, Ian Fleming, he called it Smirch. Stan Lee, you want to understand geopolitics of the present time, go read Captain America. Right? Go watch those 3 Captain America movies. Hail Hydra, that's what it is all about. End of World War II. Germany, the German people, once again, bombed into the Stone Age. But 7 million Nazis left Europe, spread around the world. 70,000 came into the United States through Operation Paperclip, not just a handful that went to the missile range. No. And we had ICBMs, before we put a satellite. The Nazis had gone to the moon before the end of World War II. Early 40s, they went to the moon. Because they went down to Antarctica and found the hidden treasure trove of, arcane science knowledge. And that was, their radar to find that was a crew in Germany called the Fool Society, which was a, there are many, many, many what are known as mystery schools, right? Or arcane schools, or cults, right? And esoteric. And all of those things don't mean devil worship. It means hidden knowledge, right? And what you're going to see, and Scientology was the harbinger of this, so was theology, theocratic, theocracy, Madame Blavatsky thing, and then, what's his name? Anthropophagy, Starner, Rudolf Starner. Again, I have no. you can, I tell people the story of when a nun murdered me in first grade and crushed my esophagus and broke my voice box and, crushed my orbit in my left eye and crushed the little stirrup in my ear to hear. And then, I'm first grade. I was, I don't know, 7 years old in first grade, and she crushed my head like a melon. And I had to wear a, cast on my. And I woke up, and the first, she like picked me up on the throat. I was a little peanut guy. She picked me up, pushed me against a cinder block wall, bam, 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 and then a garbage truck backed up through the window of our classroom, and it came crashing down. And it was in the middle of a duck and cover thing. So the people from, the federal government who had their clipboards, smash, crash, explosion. They run in and they see this nun, killing. And my face was a bloody pulp. And my little uniform was covered in blood. My eyeball was hanging out, and restrained her. And the first boom in my face, I was unconscious. And then, a week or so later, I woke up, and my head was in a cast. My mouth was wired. I was being fed by a hose going in there, and a hose coming out of my penis, and one out of my anus, and they had tied. I was in a straitjacket and tied to the bed. This happened to be more than once in Catholic hospitals, and and then I went to a seminary where they tried to kill me. Right? I mean, literally. So that's why I believe, I love Jesus Christ, and I love God, but the anthropomorphized Big Daddy of the pagan Catholic religion. I was born under it. My godfather was a cardinal. I was meant to be a rocket scientist for the Pope, because the first religion to really become a science-based religion was the Holy Roman Empire. And you go to the Vatican, and I've been to the Vatican Library a few times with my cardinal godfather, and it's got more kind of information than you can imagine, and a good chunk. The interesting thing about the Vatican-ness of things, they have like St. Patrick's. They have an underground that is like, whoa, baby. When I was a little kid, I used to run around until the nun killed me when I was about 6, 7. Ended up in this hospital. And when I woke up, I heard this nun, they were like looking at me and like just poking me. And I was in a straitjacket. And, I heard this nun goes, well, his brain is inflamed, and we're waiting for the inflammation to go down, and then we're going to give him a frontal lobotomy. And I knew that it was better to have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. So, and I couldn't say anything because my jaw was wired shut. I had a cast. I couldn't see anything. All I could do was breathe through straws in my nose, and I could hear things, right? But the cast wasn't like, it was where my head was squished. And this ear was covered. So this ear I could hear out of it. They were standing on this side of me, and they were going on about how I was going to get a frontal lobotomy. I knew it was an ice pick just above my eyeball. And then they go, and then that's it. Kind of like, kind of if you take, drugs. Today, we, instead of sticking the ice pick in the kid's eye, they give them drugs. So, anyway, there's not much I could do, so I was just thinking of Jesus, and then all of a sudden, everything lit up. And I was picked up. It's like I was floating through the air. And, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear all kinds of, and my cardinal godfather and my doctor, Dr. Black, who birthed me, who saved my life the first time at birth, because I was a breached baby, and the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and the stupid doctors smoking cigarettes, blood covered. They didn't even have gloves. They were trying to pull me out with salad tongue. She pushed them out of the way, put me back in my mom's uterus, moved me around, took the umbilical off, and then took the cigarette out of my mother's mouth, and kind of put a mask over her face, and gave her a good strong blast of oxygen and nitrous oxide. Totally, didn't knock her out, but just put her in another state where she wasn't going to My mom was, the two kids before me. My parents had like 8 kids, and only four survived. And three of them died. Between my younger sister and me, three, and my mom. Couldn't commit an abortion. She just smoked a carton of cigarettes every day and drank a fifth of whiskey every day. Bingo. You know, the child said, "I'm out of here." And I made a agreement with Bob that I would stick it out. So the last time I died, I played the spaghetti, and I was ready to go home. Man, I was tired. They said, "Great job! You're doing a great job. You're right on target." I said, "Good. I can go home." Well, you can, but if you do, you are. Yeah, you can hang out in the field of daisies for a billion years, but you will still have to go into the blender of karma, and God knows where you'll pop out. But go back, and you've done 89% of what you agreed to do. If you go back and do that next 11%, you'll be able to sidestep. You'll be awake. You'll be conscious. So when you die, you'll be conscious. You won't. Don't go to the light. Don't go to that kaleidoscope. What you do is, and don't go to, seeing, Granny and all of those. No. So, because they were there then, but they're not there now. That's not who they are. It's not who I am, right? I am love's co-creation. Right? So, I agreed to come on back. So that was, 7, 8 years ago, and I was 240-ish pounds overweight. So I was almost 400 pounds. So it took me 7 years to get to this shape. I didn't do what John does. I did 2,400 sit-ups. No, I just stopped eating crap. And I went back to my aesthetic practices of meditation and exercise. And exercise is walking around. So that's a lesson you have seen too much because of that nut. Exactly. Everything people, I can't believe, all these couple of things. No, that was an amazing thing. Because now I see with this eye in ways that people don't see. I see people's auras. Right? I see their energies. When I read people's palms, that's just my hook to have them like get outside of their, because they start saying things and then I can see their energetics. I can see their tells. I can see their body language. And I've been taught, I've had so many great teachers over this last 70 years. I've been taught how to read this, right? And then when I went into psychotherapeutic, biz, that's all it is, the biz. I have a friend of mine who hawks me out as, great, wonderful Oz. But he's always, once I kind of blow people away and I'm like pushing him against the wall, he goes, "Okay, it's time for us to go back to the Institute," alleging that, okay, he's crazy. So I said, "Listen, if you want to play that game, you have to call me Dr. Alvin, Clauses, plays Clauses, and that I'm your doctor and we're going back to the Institute." And he's like head of, big, political / industrial enterprise that everyone respects. And yes, he's a really sweet guy. There's nobody other like him. And so when the two of us are together, we were this dynamic duo. But once he stumbled onto me, he basically realized I could help him do things he couldn't do. And so once I started doing that, he realized that he would have to change, and he's trying to think he can still stay the same, still do what he does, and yet have me be out there. So if somebody wants to shoot somebody, I'll do that. And he can have the kind of direction of change he wants, but he can just say, "Oh yes, wasn't he great?" So, and that's fine by me. But the sad thing is, so he puts me in a lot of situations where I can help a lot of people. And once in schools and businesses and in governments, and once he injects me into these places, I start doing it. I'm like a solvent. There is no waiting time once I'm involved, and a good portion of the that population, whether it's an institution or a business or a government, a good portion of the people who are in those things want want me to help them. But the people who are more concerned about their own personal power, which is an illusion, kind of get upset. And then when I talk to them, when I realize they're the stuff obstructionism, I go to them, and that's when I freak them out. I just, no one else is around, no one's going to hear me tell them stuff. And I tell them exactly who they are, what they're scared of, what they've been doing their whole freaking life, why they so hate themselves and have such self-loathing. And they're like, ah. And I say, listen, I can help you with that. And not only can I help you with that, I can make you way more successful than you are now. Because all you are doing is setting yourself up for crashing and burning. And I don't really care. I can walk away and let you, same with all of these groups and things. I can just walk away and go back to the woods and talk to my buddy, right? And because, as my master, Akasha K, said, listen, just tell the people what's going on. You don't have to make a change, just tell them, explain it. You can't, as your mother would say, you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So this 11%. I don't have to do all the other amazing things I did when I was young. I don't have to start great movements and save people. No, I don't have to do anything. Same with John. I spent a good 3 years of being there, being an example. You go watch it, Tom. When I was hot, when I was not in good shape in those days. I'm in way better shape than I am now. And so, and in the last 3 years, I have, even though I'm living out in the middle of nowhere, I have had my great influence over a lot of different people. In a lot of ways, way more than I did when I was in Roanoke. Right? Because there's, I did a lot of things in Roanoke, got a lot of things moving, and it's still exactly where it was 20 years ago when I first pulled into Roanoke. Yes, I influenced and touched many people's lives, and that's a good thing. But the organizational structures and movements that I started there, and everyone wanted me to be the big daddy. And I said, no change is going to happen unless you start making the change. You want to start with some kind of change. Look in the mirror, right? Anyway, so the next, somewhere between 12 and 20 years I have left, I don't have to start any big movements because they're already moving. All the stuff I did 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, all those dropping of pebbles in the pond, those little waves are getting bigger and bigger. And I wasn't the only one. There were thousands of people on this planet and on other planets dropping those pebbles in there. And so that's where we are today. So take heart, young ones, that it's all good. I love that you stay here. Feel desire. Yep. Here's come back. Involved. Yes, right. And so I can be in the woods, but I agreed that I would spend, that 11%. But part of that agreement was that, Love's Co-Creation would always, come and find me and say, okay, let's get to it. And I'd say, sure, let's go. I'm in service to that. But I don't have to go look for it. Right? It's going to, I'm in service of it. It knows where I'm at. So, and it'll only be the best. That's one reason why, I'm in the warm-up, corner of the field, because I'm allowed to enjoy these years. I mean, I enjoyed everything I did, no matter, again, it's gain, said, being murdered by that nun was the best thing that happened for me at that time. Because what happened was, yes, here it was, I had my heard, and then when they unjawed it, I couldn't speak at all. I had to learn how to speak. I couldn't hear. Everything was like echo chamber. I couldn't see, because I was seeing all kinds of other frequencies that most eyeballs don't see. My cardinal godfather sent me to the Marinol Sanctuary. 40, 20 guys and 20 girls there who were all brilliant. Half of them had Nobel Prizes, and they were all, you name the discipline, they were historians, they were theologians, they were mathematicians, physicists, they were, there was a guy who was an audiologist who helped me hear. There was another guy who was all about your eyeball, and another guy who taught me how to speak. Because once I could, he first had to get me to, because my voice box was crushed. So I don't have the same voice box you do. So I had to learn how to take the breath and put it in a different direction to speak. And so it didn't have that immediate kind of connection that we have with our frontal lobes to our voice box. And so that's how I sounded. Right? Once I could speak, right? So I had to retrain that little mechanism, and how it works is, for me anyway, I think about what I'm going to say, and I line it all up and put it on the tape recorder up here, and then I play it out there. Because the thing that gets me to stutter is when my brain is searching for the right word to say. So one of those great nuns, sisters, right? They were brothers and sisters. They didn't call themselves priests and nuns. They were brothers and sisters. She was an audiologist and a speech therapist, and her real discipline was etymology, where words came from. And so she and I had the greatest of time just studying what words really meant. And that's where I realized, she taught me, that words are spells. Spelling is a spell, so they call it spelling. And English words, are made up of so many different languages. English is a language of mercantilism. Other Greek is a language of myth, and science, and Latin is a language of myth, science, and politics, and that's what the Holy Roman Empire really was. The political structure wasn't a spiritual structure, right? And that's why Catholicism looks so pagan, as especially basically the folks who are Islamic, they're Christians on steroids. I'd like to see some Christians pray 5 times a day. When I lived in North Africa, I would go to the mosque because basically my employment, everybody was out in the field, digging up artifacts, and 3 times a week they'd bring them back to the motel and show them to me, and I would give my open-ended opinion of what they were. Not a scholastic anything. But head guy back in Rockefeller Foundation sent me there with his #1 guy who was running the whole show, and that's what I was. They called me, that's when I started being a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist, because that's who the #1 guy was. He had so many degrees, and his joke was I had more degrees than a thermometer. So I picked that one up. Now, the few degrees I have were actually given to me at a certain time, so I could have a bona fide of authority when I would go to these meetings. They would go, "Where's your go to school? What degree do you have?" And I would have them with me. I have them in my briefcase. See, here's my degree. I don't have many more. They kind of got lost along the way. And so, anyway, I was in that little city that was right on the edge of the Valley of Kings, right? And also, so the crew kept going way further, kind of over near Iraq and digging up really kind of technological artifacts, right? Like Looking Glass, right? And that's what the war, the Gulf War of '91 was about. The French and the Germans had found a real, find of technology that was still working. This stuff was like 3 million years old, and it was still working, and it was a physical representation of epoch, like two epochs ago, right? And and you looked at that it was just like you saw the Star Trek, Jim Kirk and Bones and Spock, and they hit a rift in time. And the whole ship shudders, and a couple people get hurt, and Bones comes up on the bridge and shoots this little kid with a drug, and the kid goes from death to being, oh, I feel fine. And he's got a red shirt. He could die. All the guys who die always had a red shirt. And then the ship shudders again, and Bones gets a full hypodermic of the hypo spray of what that drug was, which is like LSD to the 10th power. And so he's like, and he runs all over the ship and jumps on the thing and zips down to this planet, and they go down there. And they're looking for him, and they finally grab him, and that's when they see the gate, and this kind of donut with dry ice around it, and in the center you're seeing all of history. I could do anywhere you want to go, blah blah blah. And that was Looking Glass. That's good old Mr. Star Trek. Basically knew about this because he had worked at what's that place? The Rad Lab. He worked in aerospace during World War II. Until he became a writer and he was right in Hollywood. So he went from aerospace into that. And he was like one of the guys, the guy who started Scientology and a few other guys. They all worked either at JPL or Rad Lab or at Stanford. And those places were way more like Manhattan Project wasn't just about the atomic bomb. It was about esoteric technology, super duper, being like time machine kind of stuff, right? And that's what Looking Glass was. It allowed the folks who had it, and remote viewing is an organic version of Looking Glass. And Looking Glass was like a TV set, so you could turn to the channel you wanted to without having to go to find someone. I mean, virtually anyone can do remote viewing, but see, remote viewing only gives you access to one specific thing right there. Looking Glass, it's got a big window. You can see, 360. You can see all over the place. So anyway, we had stumbled across different elements of that kind of technology, since King Arthur's. That's what Merlin was all about, right? So Merlin could have been a time traveler behind me. So nothing is as it seems to be. And so my exposure to all of this over the many, many, many moons is that I have just the luck to be in the right place at the right time and have the awareness to go, oh, look at that. Instead of like, oh, I'm scared, or oh, I don't see anything. What are you talking about, man? I don't do any of that. I'm like Janie Cookie. So it's, she is awake, and like out of the 500 to 2,500 of you who watch this on a pretty regular basis. I don't know why the 2,000 of you don't subscribe or give more thumbs up or any of the above, but that's okay. I'm not here to. This is just an opportunity for me to speak to the World Wide Web. and even though it's only 2,500 people who watch it, and 2,000 of them are too scared to even subscribe. Um, and it's not that so much they're scared. It's when they see it, they're like, they don't. I don't want to watch this. I don't want to hear that. You know? And and that was part of the issue of my being, all the different worlds. The scholastic world, the medical world, the scientific world, the political world, the economic world. All those people who are at the top, tippy top of the middle management, said, "We need Alan," and I would, give access to things, and I would work for people who were awake and a lot older than me, but we're on the same path I was. They were, I had this access, but the general power structure just wanted the status quo, and what we're going through is in the status quo, and everything I have been through is in the status quo, and most people would have died by now, and I haven't. I died 7 times, and I just keep coming back, and have 2 more, well, actually 1 more death, and then come back, and the next death, that's it. And it's between 12 and 20 years. But I'm supposed to roll into some cutie, somewhere around 28 to, in childbearing age and have a child. I'm meant to have a child that I will spend at least 10 years with to give them 411 of what is going on that they can carry on. It's called the Merovingian chain. I don't know if I am so much on that bloodline, but I'm sure the lady that I'm coming onto, or will come on to me, will be of that chain. So, and I just, every moment when I'm here, I do my best. And I'm happy to be here, right? So that's the story. So, I can go on. So I listen to the radio a great deal, right? And whatever, I listen to my short wave. So, I don't listen to what most people listen to, right? So, I do listen to public radio, but that's probably. I do listen to BBC, but that's probably. But culturally, they have a shift that Goering and Goebbels basically the key to propaganda is the you have to have 40% truth in there for propaganda really to work. And there was a Freud's nephew, starts with a B. He started a thing in England that was during World War One, which was all about propaganda, right? And it was what was it called? They'll pop in a month. Started with a T. T Institute, whatever it was, and it's still going strong, and that's what modern advertising is, right? And that's what news has turned into, modern advertising, right? So, but to understand what's kind of going on in the plane of world events, of his story, wars and economic collapses and booms and busts and pandemics. These are all things that there isn't a catastrophe that shouldn't be taken advantage of, and that's the basic premise of politics, right? It's not so much that these things are made up. But what was the difference between the Chinese flu and 19? Nothing, right? Or the next one. But and we're going to have a pandemic relatively soon. That will be a mixture of 19, of monkeypox, Ebola, polio, and some other things we don't even know about. And I would say that in the next 4 or 5 years, they're finding some really interesting rocks on Mars, right? And the rovers that are around there have technology on them to put these interesting rocks and specimens into specific um, jars, and that they are building now a spaceship that they're going to launch in maybe 2 years. That are going to go to Mars, go into orbit around Mars, and the things that are there now collecting specimens, they will shoot them up in the air like a gun, get them up going, a mile or two above it, and that thing that's circling down will send something down, scoop it up, and bring it back to the orbiting satellite. And after it gets, all the samples, it'll come back to Earth. And we did that with moon rocks, and Mars is a lot more viable for life than the moon ever was, because the moon was an artificial, it's a spaceship. Straight out of George Lucas's. Where do you think George Lucas got the idea for Star Wars? Straight out of the mouth of Joseph Campbell, right? And Joseph Campbell told him the story about, the hero, right? And that we have been this hero for 1 billion years, right? And we've had different epochs doing different things, and we've been more sophisticated, more evolved, more technologically unbelievable, 16 million years ago than we are today. We're still cavemen today. Right? And again, closer to God state. And our God state is all our relations, and it's our spirit. Our soul is just a transportation device, right? And our spirit, because you read, the New Testament and everything that Jesus said, he never mentions soul. And in the Old Testament, nobody mentions soul. It's just the Holy Roman Empire that stuck it in there because it is something that they can rent out. Your soul is something that they can sell, buy and sell. The spirit can't be, That's the free will is your spirit, not your soul. Your soul is something, it's just a transportation. It's like a cab. So they can buy and sell it all they want, right? And your avatar is just what it is. It's a bag of water, right? It's not who you are. Your consciousness is not here. It's just you're because the prana brings forth the spirit through the soul into your bag of water, and you can basically experience things to learn that your spirit needs to understand. Because if you go back in the Old Testament and look at the story of Moses and the burning bush, right? And the burning bush shows up and says, Moses, go to Egypt and free the Hebrew nation, right? And you got to realize that the Hebrews there were not per se slaves. They were middle management, right? You have to realize that everyone on this planet, this is a slave planet. And even if you are, the mayor of the town, the owner of the bank, you're still a slave. You're still middle management. You're not top of the heap, not even close to the middle of the bottom of the heap. But your spirit is uncorruptible, And so you see all these religions, that want to talk about Jesus who died on the cross for your sins. You have no sin. Your spirit has no sin. Now, your puddin-head mud puppet makes mistakes all the time. So, duh. I mean, I'm a pretty aware guy because my raison d'etre, reason to live, is to do my best in all I do. But 40%, I'm unconscious, just picking my nose, eating it, 40%. The other 60%, I'm pretty on top of it. And the average mud puppet is maybe 3%, kind of, what was that? And so I used to, Grandfather David in Navajo, and He was part of the crew that held when the white buffalo was going to show up. That's when the hidden knowledge was supposed to be unearthed, and he did. He came to the United Nations and he spoke, to the general thing. And all he did, he had a big kettle drum, boom, 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 and they played and sang for 3 days. And everyone thought, they're going to show up at a rostrum and have it all printed out, and they would read, the hidden knowledge, and they sang it. And so, first, everybody was in the general center. All the high mucky mucks were there, about 1,500 people in suits and dresses, and these guys just showed up in their, Carhartts and denim shirts and cowboy hats and cowboy shoes, and basically, had the big kettle drum, boom, boom, boom. And, Grandfather David I was his grandson. We met in the middle of the valley from Mount Taylor, right? And that valley was called the Snake Goddess. And in any direction, 40 miles, there was nothing, no cities, no lights, no nothing. And I was working at this uranium mine, and we lived in the mine, and it was lit up like a football stadium, so you never could see any stores or anything. And after about 3 weeks, and the first time they tried to kill me, like I almost died 4 times in that uranium mine, right? And the third time, when I got my first big check, I went into grants, and everybody went to the bar, and I went into the bank. And I said, "Hey, here's my check. I want to start a checking account and savings." She was like, "Oh, wow." At that time, inflation was like 19%. Forget about 9%. 20, 30, 36%. Anyway, that bank, because of the interest rates and because of that bank, they said, well, if you start a checking and a savings account and you can put X amount of dollars right in this other account right now, we'll give you 20% interest on that money and whatever more money you put in that one the next 2 years. And if you can put, so you're making like, every 2 weeks you're making almost $4,000. You put 2,000 of that into that account. In 2 years, you're gonna have $100,000. I said, okay, sounds good. I said, you can take it out every 8 months. You can take X amount of money out without being, especially if you put it in your checking account. And so I did that, and I got a savings account too. They gave me 8% on that, and that was, I didn't put that much in that, but it was, if I did X amount, like $1,200 into that account, and used it as a thing that you could draw on into your checking account when it goes down. If you keep at least $1,200 in that thing, you're going to make 8% on the savings account. So she set me all up, and out of that $4,000 check, I took $500, and took my all. And this bank was on a trailer. I mean, if you wanted to rob the bank, all you need was a pickup truck and put it on a trailer hitch and drive away with the bank. And this bank would have a couple $1 million in it every payday, every 2 weeks, because I had enough money to give half those guys cash their check. So anyway, instead of like those morons, they just, and they didn't even go to the bank anymore. They kept cash their check at the bar. And the guy would take 5% of whatever they had. So I went to the bank, did all that, got $500, went into this place. The only real building in all of Grants at that time was this gigantic truck stop, big truck stop restaurant, then a steakhouse, then a titty bar, then a cowboy store, anything you needed to be Western boy. Then they had a place where you could get showers and a shave and a massage by these titty bar girls. Ending in a happy ending. So anyway, I was 21. So anyway, I did my banking. I went in. The guys were going, I came with them. and we had these. They were linemen, and linemen are like so. We had these lineman coats that were like basically sheep turned inside out. The sheepy woolliness was on the inside, and the hard skin was on the outside. And you know, they were almost bulletproof, and they kept you warm. Big hood, you could just and the sleeves came over your hands, so you could do this. They had this thing that you did this on the inside, it would close up, so you wouldn't. Like, man, the coldest place I've ever experienced was in the Mexico desert. Anyway, so I've been working there for now about a month, and I had these two checks. The first one I checked, I didn't do anything with. And the second one, I put them both in there, $4,000, and set this thing up, and then had it so it automatically, because that mine was connected to the bank, so she just went on her, her little apparatus and set everything up, right? No big deal, right? I just signed a few things, bingo. All the money, never saw it, just went in that thing. This much went into this account, this much went into that account, and then so I always had, a large sum of money in my checking account, right? Which also had an interest on it. So I was making interest on all my accounts. Anyway, so I leave there, 505 Benjamins in my pocket, and I basically take two and stick it in my wallet, put my wallet in my lineman coat that on the inside had this big pocket with a zipper. Put it in there, zip it, and put that coat in the van that I came in, right? And then I just went from the van, 200 feet to the front door, went in there and went and saw the guys, and they were, right? And when I looked around, I said, oh, look at that. And I went and got some cowboy clothes, right? And nice pair of jeans, nice cowboy shirt, a nice coat, Carhartt coat with a hood. That would keep you, that would not be like my lineman coat, but it'd still be warmish. And a couple other pants, and I bought myself a couple of nice quilted overalls with hoods, and some really nice single onesie thermal underwear and work boots and socks and gloves and a couple different hats and a nice cowboy hat. And all of that cost me $75. This was 1971. And so I said, oh, box it up for me and I'll take these clothes. And I went into the place where they scrubbed you down and shaved you. So my beard was everything, just real long hair, it was all over the place. And I went in and they showered me down. They had the girls in there scrubbing you down, like a horse. They were cute. They were bouncing around and just, you want a massage? One goes, so yeah, line me up for a massage. So they scrubbed me down, and I have a nice pair of pants and a shirt and my jacket and a nice hat and nice boots and socks and some thermal underwear. Anyway, so I just put the pants on, the shirt on, well, just a t-shirt on, and the girl came in with a titty bar. She goes, "You bought all that clothes here. My boss said to give you a few of these t-shirts," and they're like titty bar. The Horny Dog was the name of the bar, and it had this dog humping, more than humping, but physically the Horny Dog. So sure, put on pants, put on the shirt. I go into the barber. He does, cloth. I said, I want you to take the beard down, but leave a beard, but very well trimmed, right? Okay. And same with my hair. Keep it kind of long, but just, And I said, the size I want it kind of really clipped short. Back here, I have about a foot of. I want you to ponytail like the Indians have. Said, really? I said, yep. I said, okay. So he did that, and So I came out, and the girls were waiting for me, and they took and gave me a nice, 40 minutes massage, and with a happy ending. And I came out, and I was feeling no pain. And they were smoking, they had blunts, so they kept sticking them in my mouth. And so, I came out, and I went into a nice steakhouse they had. And I had a big steak, and I had lobster, and surf and turf. I said, ooh, surf and turf, what vegetables you got? Baked potato. Okay, that's it. So I had, steak and lobster and a baked potato. And I said, what wine? They had a wine. I said, give me that bottle of wine. So I had a bottle of wine. And then the girls who gave them massage came, oh, do you want to I said, sure. Girls, have a drink. So we're talking, and they wanted to, I wanted to dance and just talk with them. We can't stay. I said, who else is here? She goes, oh, our boss said, we can't stay with you for more than 20 minutes unless we can take you back to the VIP room. I said, well, I'm like, I'm already happy. So here's $20 for each of you. So anyway, so then this guy comes over and he starts laughing. And I go, what's wrong? He goes, those guys you came with? I go, yes. They left about an hour and a half ago. I said, what? And I'm 40 miles to where I'm supposed to be, like where our Hanta hut is. We're sleeping. We would sleep, we would show up at the mine on Sunday and leave Friday afternoon. And that whole time we would be there, and we get paid for being there, even when we're sleeping. Not as much as when we were working, but that's why I was making so much money. And I was getting paid more than them because I didn't work for Cargill or for United Nuclear. I worked for a subcontractor. I was getting paid pretty good. So, I go, what am I going to do? Because it's like 43 below zero, and my lineman coat and my wallet was in that van. So I basically, the guy goes, oh, don't worry. There's a school bus that goes right from town and stops off at every line, and I have to get on the school bus. You can come home, sleep on the couch with me, get on the school bus. And I said, okay, sounds like a deal. So, I wake up, like, 5 in the morning, and I say, all this clothes I bought, I really don't need to take. You're my new friend. Can I leave this stuff here with you? And come back next time and sleep on your couch again. He goes, yeah, sure. He goes, matter of fact, I can sell you a vehicle. This is a vehicle. And I said, really? Said, yeah, that's my side thing. I'm a motorhead. And I said, and in the morning, he goes, well, but at least you can pick any one of those, right? And he goes, you don't even have to buy it. Just give me $100 and you can drive that one around. And, it'll still be registered to me, and it'll, just put you on the insurance, and sounds great. So we take the bus. We, and I get where I'm supposed to be on time at 7 in the morning, and that's in this building called the block house. And our supervisor would tell us, okay, we're going to run this much pipe here, we're going to do that, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I show up, and people are there, and the guys I came with, I'm looking around for them, they're not around, right? And the guy, who's our supervisor, he's a black guy, right? And he's got a clipboard, and he's reading something, and I walk up next to him, and I look at it, and it's got, the state of New Mexico's logo and the Highway Patrol. I'm like, and I go, hey, Bob, what's up? And he looks at me, he looks down at the clipboard, looks at me, and this is a black guy. And he is black as this, right? And he turns white as that and falls over. And he starts to go, I'm trying to catch him so his head doesn't snap on the concrete floor like a melon. When he comes to, he goes, you're dead. You're dead. You're the dead guy. You're dead. He goes out again. I pick up the clipboard, and those morons who just went to the bar and drank, they got into the van without even looking for me because I was a youngster. I wasn't really their friend. I just went along with them because I worked with them. And, they all shot heroin all the time. And I wasn't a skag. And So, I kind of stayed by myself and read books, and I had a Walkman of classical music. So anyway, I basically he woke up and when I said, "Well, I didn't get on the van," so what these guys did was I was zipping down the highway at like 110 miles an hour, and let's just out in the middle of nowhere. The mining companies would park these gigantic, cat bulldozers. That were as big as a building, right? And they would park them in such a way where the big front end plow or skiff or scoop would be facing the oncoming traffic. So if they hit them, they would hit that, and it would really hurt the expensive part of the big machine. And so these morons came flying down the road, and when one guy fell asleep, and he just went right into the big flat scoop of one of these gigantic bulldozers and smash, turned it into an accordion, and then blew up and caught fire, and then they didn't find him until a couple hours later, and the only thing that kind of survived was the alignment coats, and they weren't wearing their alignment coats, but mine was in the vehicle, and my wallet was there. So they found my coat and my wallet, and they assumed that I was dead. So I was on the list of the dead guys. So when they saw me, so that's when I became the dead guy, right? And because I was doing all this, termination and transformer work, I didn't go down in the hole or really do a lot of line because I did a line with these morons for the first 2 weeks, and they were jerks. And so they worked for Cargill. I worked for this other company. I got paid 4 times what they did. But my boss just said, hey, we need this done. And so their boss said I was their supervisor. And I was like, 10 years younger. I didn't want to go up those big towers with those morons. So I was just the guy who would, get all the stuff ready and then send it up to them. And they would throw bolts at me. And anyway, and within 2 weeks they had run into a bulldozer. So after that, I was working in the powerhouse, and they gave me this little teeny yellow, screaming yellow truck, and I would, work on termination of large transformers and switching gear, and they had the engineering shed where I would go at least once a day to say, okay, this is what the print I have says, and this is the stuff they sent me as hardware to, install. It's like, so how do you want it done? Virtually every day, because everything was so mismatched, so unorganized, so just please. And of course, the taxpayer was paying for it because it was a semi-military event, right? So. The contractors didn't care how much money they wasted. They made $16 on every dollar they spent. So if they wasted, $1 million, they would get $16 million, and they could write it off. And so they would have to pay taxes on it. They'd say that it was a loss. Right? So it was a scam beyond belief. I mean, that's when I really started seeing the scamology of our government and the military, media, banking. Because at bank, they gave me all of those, that amazing leg up was because I was working for that company, right? That was part of I was getting a taste of the corruption, right? So I wouldn't go against it, And this is while the rest of the country is in a tremendous, recession, right? So, and like the oil, gasoline and out there was 28 cents a gallon during the oil embargo. It's like, really? Anyway, so after 3 months, and spring was coming. It was like almost April. One night, I just could not take it because we slept in these gigantic Quonset huts, and there was no privacy. I'd be there with 30 guys, and they were shooting up and masturbating right there. I kind of liked the blatant honesty of it all, but it was just not my thing. And they'd be blaring Kiss music, and it was just. Anyway, so I got myself a little boombox. I was playing David Bowie music, and someone smashed. Oh, like that. They just smashed my boombox. It's like, and I think that's when the little headphones from Sony came around. Anyway, so Walkman. So anyway, right around April, right? It was like a light switch. It went from ridiculously cold to where it wasn't going to freeze you to death, right? And certain days, if you were out in the sun, man, it was like you would be burning up. And so it was getting towards April, and it had switched, and the little flowers out in the desert were coming up. So one night, I guess, after we had chow, I kind of walked out, went through the gate. The guy goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm just taking a walk." I mean, it was high security, but, we're in the middle of nowhere, Mount Taylor, right? And the most sacred mountain to the Hopi Indians, right? So I walk out, and there's this big valley, big mesa, right? It's like 40 miles this way, 40 miles that way, and the big mountains here, and I just walk around the mountain. I just walk into this, and I'm just look up, and as soon as I went around the corner, all of that light, they lit the place up like a football stadium. There was no light there. This big mountain between the light and me. It was darkest. Other than Vermont, that was the darkest place I ever went to. And I'm looking up at the stars, and I've never seen stars like that. It was like Vincent Van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night. Stumbling through the sage, and I'm going along, and all of a sudden, I fall down. I've been doing this for about 40 minutes, and I, boom, fall flat on my face on top of the little guy. And he said, "Get off of me, get off of me, get off of me." And he started screaming at me. And I help him up. Don't touch me, don't touch me. He's an old brown guy, And I look at him. He looks at me. He goes, "You're working that mine over there, don't you? You can't stand it, can you? You feel the energy of this place. You were looking at the stars, and you couldn't say a word. You still can't say a word." He goes, "That's how I feel, and I was born here. I was walking through the mesa looking at the stars, right? And you were walking this way. I was walking that way. We are out in a 200 square mile mesa, and you fell on top of me. It is obvious the great maker wanted you to meet me." And so he goes, "Come on back to my house." So he takes me back to his house. We have a cup of tea, and he goes, "You're going to be my grandson, and I'm going to teach you the wisdom of the Hopi prophecy." Now, you probably, normally, like how I learned them, it took 50 years. I'm going to have to teach you 50 years worth of stuff in months, right? However long you're going to be here. Obviously, you're not going to be here that long. You aren't like those pudding heads. I said, he goes, how close have you gotten to being dead? I said, and that was my nickname, the dead guy, right? And they were betting on when I would die, what day, right? They mastery and servitude, yeah. Yep, the dropping conscious of the ocean. So I spent about 3 months with Grandfather David, and I truly became his grandson. Rubus, good to see you, buddy. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland, your Sensei on Bob. And here it is, 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 19 seconds. And there's 2 of you, 2 thumbs up. And I've just realized that everyone I sent my novels to, after they've got a hold of me at the Due to Wake 42 at Dreamland, Due to Wake 42 at Dreamland, you know, has I sent them my novels, but if they weren't on Google, then because my documents I type in Google and I sent them in Google, and if they were on Microsoft or any other platform, Google said screw you, right? And then they would say you have to unblock it. Well, it's not unblocking. I had to format it in whatever format they platform they're on, so I can send it to them. So they had to tell me what to send. Well, they put only one person in 20, because I sent it off to about 20 people. About 8 of them were on Google themselves. So they got it, not a problem. So that's why I didn't know why some people said, oh, I'm not kidding. You're blocking it. You're blocking it. I hate you. You're blocking it. I wasn't blocking it. They just went on Google. And it wasn't until yesterday that someone explained to me, oh, you sent me all this stuff, and I'm at this institute. He's a library scientist, and so historian. And so he is on this, his platform is the university's platform, not Google's platform. So he says, next time you come to lunch, I'll just send it to my Google account. I said, oh, okay. And I said, how come you can't just, I'll send it to you, just send me your Google account. Because I tried that. I can't quite do it. This other way will be a lot easier. I said, whatever, I don't get it. So I just learned that yesterday. So all of you folks, you can the thing is, you can get hold of me on my email. And that's the interesting thing, is that it's run by Google, Wake42 at Gmail. That's any email can get a hold of me on my Gmail account. But for me to send a document from Google Docs, you got to be on Google Docs. So it's one of these things that I knew nothing about, and then all these people, you're blocking me, you hate me, I hate you. It's like, really? Okay. Red ink, yep. Alive blood. This is sovereign, yep. Thank the Pope and the Queen. Sign in red, yep. Yep. That's why they do that. Yep. That's like Admiralty law. Jamie, do you know about Admiralty law? I mean, that's what we are all, while boats go into berths is because they're being born again. That's what being born again is about. I mean, like I said, all of English, spelling is a spell. So Jamie, send me your email, and if you can receive Google Docs, you can say you can, or tell me what platform I can send, rearrange my document into. If I can do that, I mean, when it says send, I got a choice, Microsoft, this, that, or the other thing. So I can do it relatively easily, but no one told me about it. I know nothing about this stuff. So anyway, I stuck with Grandfather David, and he put me through some real interesting ceremonies, like the best one I can tell you about. So we had a lot, and we would go to powwows, right? And I learned to drum traditional. I would sit down with the grandfathers at kettle drums and drum, right? Because I would go into state, and I'd be an old Indian guy. And all these shamanic grandfathers would be, yeah, this kid, he's got it. Boom, boom, boom. And I was like 21, they're like 70-something. Boom. And we'd go to these big powwows, and I would be, Grandfather David was the head, thing of the Hopi prophecy, right? And so they would say, David, why is this white boy? He's like, he is my grandson, right? They go, okay. Because everyone's married and everybody else. There were a lot of guys in those powwows who looked very Anglo. And there was this one tribe called the Wannabes, right? So, but I wasn't, I was Grandfather David's godson. Not godson, grandson. More than godson, I was his grandson. So anyway, so I would be at these powwows and drum with these guys, the old guys. Boom, boom, everyone was dancing, right? And I would get up and dance too. When the spirit got me, the old guys would feel it and just kind of throw me in the circle, and I'd be dancing around, which kept me in good spirits because 10 years later, when I went to Australia and I was hanging out with the Aborigines, I went straight, they didn't have telephones, but they had sticks. And I would sit in a circle with the old guys doing the beat, right? And scratching too, and didgeridooing, right? And didgeridoo, they just had the stick that was being eaten out by termites, and you just like, and, and the termites would still be in there. And I remember my beard was covered in ants one time, and this old grandmother came over and laughed, and she just said, "Here, because they think you're their brother." And she goes, "Just don't breathe them in. You can chew them up; they're good for you, but don't breathe them in." Right? So, I mean, these are the experiences I've had my whole freaking life from different cultures, and it just amazes me because here I'm out in the art, Appalachians, and the Blue Ridge is just over there, mountain folk. I relate to them just the same way, but they're being destroyed, just like the Aborigines, the Native Americans, the indigenous folk around the world are being destroyed. So are the Holler folk. Right? When I first got here, there were 19,000. Now there are only 3,000. I got here from truck farming. It's still pretty viable. Monsanto and Whare made me destroy it. We just have a monoculture of feed corn, GMO feed corn, GMO tobacco, GMO Christmas trees, and GMO sunflowers. That's it. And they grow the same thing over and over, and it just is eating up the land. I mean, it's empty. When I got here, the fields were like dark loam. Now they're like concrete. And these things will grow in the concrete. And the feed corn is truly insane, is that they drive over with this harvester that picks up the whole plant from the dirt up. And it chews it all up. It doesn't just take the corn husk, it chews everything, right? And turns it into feed. The cow eats everything, right? And the plant is still in the concrete. And in the spring, they just, late winter, they just spray it with this goof, and it goes back. It's just mind up. And then every other week, airplanes and helicopters fly over and spray it. Everyone who lives in that valley is breathing it. Right? And what's really interesting, Roundup, its main ingredient, glyphosate, was first okayed by the FDA to be an antibiotic, an antifungal. And they just found that it killed everything. So they just used it on plants. And that they could genetically engineer the plant to not die from this threat. Ergo, the plant is worthless. So that's what we're eating. And this is, all these wars, all these pandemics, all this everything. And it's not us against the commies or the Chinese or the this. No, you read 1984, it's exactly what we have the big brother, the unipolar power structure. That's who's in control. Yep. Not me. Yep. So those voices of people, I would turn my laptop around, but it would be inappropriate because everyone here is 100 pounds overweight. Now, I was 240 pounds overweight. Now, it wasn't from drinking Mountain Dew. It was like 10 years of eating super duper rich people food, right? And eating a lot of it. And it was a form of suicide. It was a very comfortable suicide. When I died, I was told to go back. So I had to pop up, and they were rolling me into the operating room. They cracked my chest, gave me a quadruple bypass, cut my legs off. I said, "No way, Jose. I didn't sign anything. Take me back. Country road." Anyway, so that's the story. And Tony, I was with Grandfather David, and and he taught me amazing things. He initiated me in great things. And so I'll give you one little story of an initiation. So I'm living with him, no longer am I in the Fanta. He gave me a little, dirt bike, and the guy in town let me use his. He gave me a station wagon I could drive around for $100 a month. Like I said, he owned it. He had the insurance. I was just on the insurance. Right? I had a little card on the registration that said that I could drive around. Right? So I had a station wagon and I had a motorbike, and gas out there was 30 something cents. Right? So, and that station wagon had gigantic gas tank, like 25-gallon gas tank. So that was my gas station, right? I would put the hose in there and a little pump and would suck the gas out, put it in my motorcycle, put in Grandfather David's car. It was way fun. So we would read and talk and pray every night. He would cook, I would cook. I would fix things around his farm, and at least twice a week we would do ceremony. Right, he would teach me things. And this one ceremony, it's called the heart song. And so I showed, I show up from work around 5 o'clock. He's sitting on the porch and he goes, "Okay, get my truck." Just fill my truck up with gas from your car. So I did, and we got in the truck and we drove out, and we were driving towards the sunset. Right, we're heading west. Right, we drive out through two different mesas to one, maybe 100 miles away, 100 miles away, right? And it was this part of the desert that no one really went to, and the military wasn't even there, and there were, homes from ancient people in the mountains, right? Just like in there, and people, not everyone knew where they were because they weren't like just out there. But there would be these, riverbeds that would dry out, and when they had floods, oh man, it'd be rushing more, right? So it was like the cat. It was like a canyon. And so we parked there and we walked. We actually, it was really dry, so we actually drove in this thing. It's like walls were like right there, and I'm going, really? And it seemed like it was getting narrower and narrower, but we hopped out into this little place, and it was still kind of where there was a spring, so there was water there, and so behind us was a big high, and then it kind of came down to this mesa. Where it kind of came down to this mesa, it was still up 100, 200 feet, right? And so the boys are there. There's a hoedown there. They got a fire going, and 5 vehicles, about 10 guys, old guys. I know all these guys are all part of David's crew, and so as soon as you get there, they say, "Oh, we got dinner," and so they got ribs and kind of, you name it, they got it. Me, they give me not gruel, but an undescribed meal, right? So I take a little, and you spoon it, right? There's nothing to grab unless you wanted to do that. I'm spooning it. Yeah, it's okay. It's not, I'm not going to spit it out. It's not terrible, but it's something indescribable. And and they said, eat the whole thing. How you feel? So we sit around and we start drumming on the big kettle drum, and it's underneath this tarp of the whole time, and the fire's over there. Boom, 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 boom. We're doing that, and it's echoing through this thing like you can't believe, and really loud. It's just like 10 of us, boom, 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 and we're singing, and then it's like they call this storm, and it comes from the east, in that kind of cavern that we kind of drove through. It's like the storm is like coming through right? And the lightning is right there, not kind of over here where the hogan is, but and it's still drumming, and the thing is coming, and it kind of goes up and encompasses this whole side of the cavern that then kind of goes down and goes down west, right? And so, but the storm is like right there, and so they stop and they get up, and we all kind of pray, and then Grandfather Dave says, "Take your shoes off." Okay. He goes, "See that cave up there? It's about 200 feet up, and there's it's not like this. It's like this. You have to climb up there, go up there, and you'll find there will be a buffalo skin, and there will be some bottles of water, and there will be dry wood, and then a big pile of wood, and a toolbox. Toolbox is sage and other things. And he would have this magic little bag of sawdust. Very, very good. That soup, you make a good soup, girl. That is a good soup.
I want you to leave now. You like my electric bill.
Okay.
But that's why I don't have Wi-Fi. I don't have computer in my bed.
Okay.
I can't afford my electric bill with $500.
Okay. She's saying that this costs too much. Well, you guys are gone. And I probably won't see you until end of next week because I have no money. And she says I can't come back. So anyway, I mean that's when I tell stories like this, it energetically changes things for people. What can I say? Okay, so it was good talking to you.